Hello and welcome back to Alex SpaceX Talks. I hope that you have all enjoyed my very first video, SpaceX and Starship in a nutshell, and I assume that you are eager to learn more about the current progress at the Starship facility at Boca Chica, Texas. Well, here it is, my first Starship update. Let's start with the not so good news first. The FAA has again delayed their decision concerning the environmental assessment of SpaceX's test facility site at Boca Chica for another month. This is the third time in a row that they have postponed their decision. Next date for an announcement will be end of April. If all goes well and the FAA will give green light to Elon Musk's company, then the construction of the upcoming Starship and Super Heavy prototypes at Boca Chica can continue, and we might very likely see the long anticipated first orbital test flight happening in May or June this year. Since the last successful test flight of a Starship prototype in May last year, not much has happened in this regard. Although the overall progress at Boca Chica had been kept at full speed, no real test flight activities had been conducted with any further prototypes so far. All eyes had been on the Starship and Super Heavy prototype, called Ship 20 and Booster 4. They had been sitting on the orbital launch platform for some months now, executing several fueling, pressurization and even static fire tests, and should have been ready for the first orbital test flight by now. But as we now know from one of Elon Musk's tweets, they will never fly. Ship 20 and Booster 4 will directly go to the scrapyard, for a very obvious reason. They are just outdated. New prototypes of Starship and Super Heavy have already been manufactured with dozens of improvements. And because the FAA has been postponing their decision about the future of the launch site in Texas, those prototypes have become obsolete. Another reason for sending upgraded prototype models into orbit is the current progress of the Raptor 2 engine. Raptor 2 has more thrust and is much more reliable than its predecessor. Booster 7 has already been rolled out of the construction high bay and is on its way to the orbital launch mount, where it will undergo several testing activities together with Ship 24. The freshly built Starship prototype. So, Starship prototype Ship 24 and Super Heavy prototype Booster 7 might very likely be the candidates to conduct the first orbital test flight out of Boca Chica. When we talk about SpaceX and its test schedules, we need to talk about the notorious Elon time. Almost all the promised test flight predictions released on Twitter by Elon Musk have turned out to have been way too optimistic. There is a famous but also very true quotation about Elon Musk and time announcements. I say something and then it usually happens. Maybe not on schedule, but it usually happens. So, when will the first orbital test flight take place? In May, June, July? This year? Next year? Let's assume that the FAA will grant SpaceX the permission to further on conduct their activities at Boca Chica. Then I would say that we can expect the flight to happen in June this year at the very latest. May might be too optimistic. But if the FAA withdraws the license, then Musk would be forced to hold his ambitions at Boca Chica and move to Cape Canaveral instead. Although that the construction work at the Cape has already begun, SpaceX would first need to build the following: a Starship, a Super Heavy prototype, an orbital launch platform, and later on a catching tower like Mechazilla. In my opinion, this would mean that we won't be seeing any test flights this year, which would be very sad, of course. But as we look at it in the long run, a delay of several months won't be a big deal and will not impact the long-term development of the Starship program. Let's talk about the Raptor engine now, and especially the newly modified Raptor 2 for a moment. 6 of those rocket engines are needed for Starship, as well as a mind-staggering number of 33 for Super Heavy. The Raptor is a newly created rocket engine which runs on liquid oxygen, which is common for rocket engines, but as a second component uses liquid methane. Elon Musk has chosen methane for a good reason. Methane can be manufactured on Mars using the so-called Sabatier process. So it in fact would be possible, once a human base on Mars has been established, to produce enough liquid oxygen and methane needed for the journey back home. The first Raptor prototypes have, more or less, reliably and successfully propelled the first Starship prototypes to an altitude of 10 kilometers. The new Raptor 2 will be more powerful, more reliable, and with a slimmer design. If you compare Raptor 1 to Raptor 2, you notice immediately that Raptor 2 consists of fewer wires. In prototyping, there is the saying, the less wiring you see, the more advanced the prototype is. With one Raptor 2 engine currently being manufactured in one day, we might get our full set of 39 Raptor 2 engines needed for our first orbital test flight in May. That's all for today's Starship update, my friends. I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and to click the bell if you want to get notified whenever I upload new videos. A thumbs up and an encouraging comment on my video below would as well be highly appreciated. In my next video, I will talk about the notorious warp drive as you have seen it in the Star Trek series and various other science fiction movies. My video, Warp Drive for Dummies, with the assistance of my cat Genie, will give you an explanation of how such an engine in theory works and if it could be used in real life. In the meantime, I wish you all a pleasant week and see you soon in my next video. Go SpaceX, go Starship, ciao!